Hi, my name is Pam Denny. I'm the designer and architect of the Maximo BI or Business Intelligence tools. In today's demo, we're going to continue our discussion on the ad hoc reporting functionality in Maximo 7.6. This will be part 2 of our series. In the first part, we evaluated the Style tab in detail, and now in this second component, we're going to look at the Content tab in detail. Our intention here is to review each one of the components in the individual dialogues to maximize your understanding of the QBR or ad hoc reporting functionality. The benefit of using QBRs or ad hoc reporting is it empowers your business and power users to create their own individual reports on the fly, which can reduce the number of custom reports you need to create and subsequently maintain. So as I mentioned in this demo component, I'm going to focus on the Content tab, but I also want to highlight a reference document. This spreadsheet or workbook is available, and the way it is set up is that each worksheet corresponds to each of the tabs in the ad hoc reporting dialog. It highlights each of the major categories. So for example, here's the parent category that we're going to see on the Content tab, and it gives you important information to highlight how the functionality is enabled. Also, it talks through some of the business rules, for example, the hierarchy order that we have in our parent categories. That's how we joined our objects that are available for selection to our users. And again, I've highlighted a couple items here in red as we navigate through each one of the fields and each one of the areas of the dialogue. You can see important information and also the business rules that are related to that. So I'll make sure that this is available for you to download in the same section of where the demos are posted, so you can utilize this to increase your learning of the functional components of QBR, but also as a reference document. So let me switch back over here and let's talk about the Content tab. First, when any user has the Create Report SIG option access, they will have access to the Content tab. The Content tab is where you're going to start to build your content. What are the individual fields that you want to display on your report? I can theoretically come into the ad hoc reporting dialog, not add any fields, and click Preview, and what will happen is that my persistent list tab fields are automatically created in a report format and pushed over to the report viewer. So again, if I look here, how many fields do I have? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 fields, and if I close this or minimize this dialog, let me just cancel it. What I'm going to see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So these persistent list tab fields, again I'm on the list tab, will display automatically in the report viewer. If I have more fields here that are not persistent, they will not display on the report. Again, reports only display persistent fields from the database. So those are the fields that are automatically available for you. Before I start getting into the dialogues of how you can add fields, I want to highlight the parent category. The parent category refers to the name of the report object structure. And if I click on this list tab, I may see other report object structures that I have access to. In this case, I have access to 2, work order details with actual and plans, and my work order details. The reason why you may want to have multiple report object structures is maybe you have some objects that you may not necessarily want to share with every security group. So for example, some labor objects, which may have some labor rates, may only be available to a segment of users. And how this information is shown, which object structures are available to me, is the report object structure access available in report administration. So let me navigate quickly there. Report administration, set report object structure security. I'm signed in here as our Max admin group, but maybe I wanted to come over here and filter, and let me filter on application work order. And you can see the number of report object structures. Remember, each report object structure is registered to an application. So I see here that my Max admin group has access to both of these, but he's the only one. Any other people would have to be, any other security groups, excuse me, would have to be explicitly added. And that's a very common issue that we see. Someone will come into the object structure application, create a report object structure, and then it's not available from the application. And the reason that occurs is, again, when you create the report object structure, make sure you define which security group has access to it in the report admin application. Well, let's go back over here to work order tracking. And I want to bring up again our Create Report dialog, and let's go to that Content tab. And I want to show you what happens when you navigate between report object structures. In this case, here is my work order details with actuals and plans, and I get those persistent list tab fields. But now let's say I want to use a different report object structure, and I click Report Work Order Details. As I see that and make that change, it says you can go ahead and do that, but you're going to lose anything that you may have in the selected field section. The reason that occurs is because there may be a different set of objects and attributes available. I'm going to stick with what I have and I'm going to cancel that, but I just wanted to highlight that that feature was available. Well, now let's talk about building up our content. Over here we have two main areas. These are the available fields that I can add, and over here on the bottom are the selected fields that are already added to my report. And again, these are the persistent list tab fields. This is my report object structure on the far left hand side. This was created in the integration object structure application, and these are all objects that are joined together via Max relationships. And Max relationships are simply the SQL that join the two objects together. I can navigate through my object structure or my category and watch what happens up here to my available field section. So in work order details, I have 153 fields that I could theoretically add to my report. As I go down the object structure and go to asset, now my asset object is highlighted and my available field selection has updated. It's only 90 at this point. Now let's come down to job plan. Again, I'm going to refresh and I have 42 attributes I could add to my report from job plan. Some of my objects have a little plus by them, and that indicates that not only is there a child object, but there's also an associated grandchild object that I could add. So if I click, for example, on labor details, he is now a grandchild of work order details. He's the child of plan detailed and the grandchild of work order details. So these individual pluses and minuses are very important as you build up content of large or more complex ad hoc reports. I'm going to come back to work order details, and let's just build up the content a little bit and show the different ways that you can add individual attributes. Our dialog has been updated in 7.6, and we now have a couple of different ways that you can add a field. So here I'm in work order details. I can simply click on the hyperlink of the attribute and it will automatically be added. And let me show that. If I navigate to the second page of my selected field, here's the actual finish attribute I added. I could also do the select box, check individual fields, click add selected, and it's going to publish those two fields down here. I could do a filter. Let's do a filter on priority. See what that comes up with, and I say, okay, I want to add the calculated priority. So that's another way that I can, quickly add a field. So again, the hyperlink, the individual checkboxes, filtering. Also, in some cases, I may have a individual report. Let's look at job plan. How many fields are there? Maybe I just want to come in and add all of the job plan fields. And that will automatically add those as my again to my selected field section. And the way I can see that, I'm going to take that a little bit slower here, is notice my category. My category is the object name. I had added all those individual reports from work order details. As I start to navigate through my selected field pages, notice here I've got job plan. Okay, so that means they all came here from job plan. And now what's interesting is when I click on job plan, nothing's available because I've added it all. So that's another important business rule, is an attribute can only be added one time from each object. I can't add, for example, work order number, work order number, work order number 3 or 4 different times from the work order details object. It's only available one single time. Well, let's take a look at our report as we're building up the content. I have about 54 fields here, and they're all going to display on my report. And you can see them over here. As we can see, they're all scrunched together. We want to highlight that we don't limit you to the number of fields that you display in a report. Why is that important? Well, oftentimes a lot of people just want to take this information and export it to a different format. So maybe I want to export my ad hoc report to XLS. So I'll wait for that to execute, and if I'm going to see if I can get that to open up for you. Here he is. So if I had limited the user to 10 or 12 fields, they would be very frustrated because that could typically, or it could impact their analytic capability of this. So again, there's no limit to the amount of fields that you want to add to this ad hoc report. So let's do a couple of other things here. Imagine that I had added those job plans, but I really want to get down to labor details. And so I decide to go right here to labor, and I'm going to skip over anything else and try to add a crew field from labor details. Well, it's going to give me an error, and this is where the hierarchy of the objects really comes into play. The error it's giving me is it says before you select fields from this category, you need to select the parent category. And the parent isn't work order, the parent in this case is plan details. That's very important because there's no direct join from work order details to labor details. The join is work order details to plan labor to labor details. So simply come into plan labor, add a field, and in this case it's going to give us another interesting message because we need to go to a detail report. And we talked a lot about style of reports, the list and the detail, in our first section. But basically, because it's a multiple relationship, meaning there's one-to-many work order to plan labor records, it's going to change it to a detail style format. And we'll start to see what that looks like as we navigate through. Well, let me quickly get over here just to show you the relationship. It's so exciting when this all comes together and we can really start to see the content that we're building here. And what I had added, if I remember right, is I added an attribute from plan labor. We should start to see it. I probably added too many fields here from job plan, but okay, so here's my plan labor. Now let's go to labor details. Okay, now I'm in labor details because I had added an attribute from its parent. I can now add crew. That really doesn't make sense to add it twice. Getting all tongue-tied here. So let me give this a better name. Crew from planned labor. And this is, maybe just I'm going to get rid of that. I can show how you delete something right here. So I'm just going to remove that. It's going to be easier. Let's grab something else a little bit better. Let me use my imagination, I guess, a little better here from labor details. So we don't want to grab crew, so we'll grab crew work group. Excellent. And again, you can see the hierarchy of the fields here. Let's click preview. What does that look like in our report viewer? It's going to change it significantly. We're going to go from this list format to a detail format because we're starting to bring in all these multiple relationships. So again, here's my work order details with all the fields, and now here's my planned labor. I don't have any specific data, but as I navigate through this, you're going to start to see a content buildup. But let me go back and, let's really build up the content of this work order details reports. Let's come down here to specs, and let's add all of those fields. We're really going to add some content here. Let's go to, plan materials. Maybe we'll have some information in plan materials. Let's grab some item information, do a filter on item. And what else can we grab? Maybe a quantity. Let's see if there's some information there. Just gotta always spell it out. I always want to abbreviate quantity. And let's grab that. Good, so we're building up a lot of content. And this is where that preview functionality, again, it's so nice. Just click preview. Let's see what it looks like. It's going to run the report. It's a transient report. Every time I do this, I'm creating a report on the fly. We're not saving anything at this point because I'm building up to the content that I want. It's going to start taking a little bit longer as this report gets more and more complex. But again, you can start to see all the individual sub-reports that I'm creating. Here's my planned labor, my planned materials, along with my work order details and my job plan information. So again, I want to highlight how important it is to follow through in the hierarchy here. Also, you may want to rename your object structures in the integration object structure application so your users cannot quickly identify if it's going to force when you select an attribute from that object to a detail report. On the selected field section, you can easily change the order or the labels of these. By default, we're picking up the description that goes with that attribute, but as I showed here, I can come down to any of these specific labels, and I'm just going to say changed by, and instead of that I'm going to say, I don't know, modified by. This is really important to change the labels because oftentimes you might bring in a description field, for example, from multiple objects, and you're not sure what description goes where. So you can, modify that value. Also, if you want to make this show as, let's say we want this guy to be, 60, I'm just refreshing the order of the different display. Change the number, click refresh, and that's going to update the values again to get that information you need. All right. Give it a minute to finish up there. The other things, just a real important points before we go. Again, talking about the report object structure, I showed you how you can have access to those. Talked about changing the different ways, the available field sections. We showed how you can search, how you can add the different values, add selected, how important it is to go through the hierarchy. And then in the selected field section, again, how you can change the labels, how you can change the order. If I come back over here, I've got way too much information in job plans. I don't know what I was thinking. Let's just select them all, see what happens. That's what I always love about ad hoc. Oops, I had clicked the wrong button. Oops, I was supposed to click remove selected and I clicked remove all. Well, I can't go back, but that's no worries because it didn't take me that long to create. So I'm just going to quick add a couple fields here. I always do better, I think, on the attribute values. Row num. Let's add the work order. Let's quickly come down here, just grab some of these plan materials. Yeah, let's just grab those. And item details. Trying to remember what else we had. I think we had some specs. What I was really trying to do, which is I guess a really great experiment, is show you all the different ways that you can add. I don't want to get into job plans. I'll just add a field or so from job plans maybe. Let's see. I wish I knew more fields in job plan, but it's not my strength, I guess. Calendar. Add selected. Oh, I didn't select any. Okay. Make sure you do that, Pam. Click that field. Boom, add selected. Awesome. And let's preview the content. It's not at all going to look like I had before, but again, it's really exciting and dynamic the way that we work with ad hoc reports. But make sure you select the right button, whether it's remove selected or removed all. In my case, it really was not that major of a deal because I didn't have that much content there. A couple other things. I want to just go back to the spreadsheet a minute and talk about a couple of the things. And that's down here when we start to get into some of the selected fields and dependencies. With the new features that were added in 7.6, specifically summaries and calculations, there are some important business rules, and I'll highlight these a number of different times in a number of different ways. But basically on the Summarize tab, it's dependent. It's looking for content that you've added. So if I want to come in and add an actual finish and I want to grab the maximum value, I can definitely do that. But now if I come down to plan services, and in this case I didn't have any content added and I want to add a quantity, it's going to give me a message. And it's basically saying you need to select an attribute from that individual object before you can start performing summaries on that value. So again, that's an overview of the ad hoc reporting content tab, the report object structures, the hierarchy of the objects, the available field sections, how you can add them through the new UI, and then the selected fields. This is the content that we have available. And then to confirm our three buttons on the bottom, if I want to close a dialog, I can hit cancel. If I want to run the report and save it as is, I'm happy with it, I would select this button. And then as I've been building my content, as I've been showing you, my most common button and my most frequently accessed is preview, and that gives us the transient report for display. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much, and then in the next series we'll start to look at the Calculate, Summarize, and Format tabs in more detail. Thank you very much.